Welcome back to another episode of the Girls Cafe, where we create a caring atmosphere for emotions. This is a space for real conversations about resilience, growth, and most importantly, empowerment. I am Shawnna, and on today's episode, we're going to talk about the mistakes we make as parents. I want this space to be a safe space, not just for conversations, but also for honesty. So today's episode is going to be a little deeply personal for myself. I'm going to be a little vulnerable. I feel like I'm already that in all the episodes that I do. But we're going to talk about the mistakes that we make, not just any mistakes, but the ones we make as parents, the kind that keep you up at night, the kind you wish you could go back and redo, but we're also talking about growth, grace, and giving yourself permission to evolve. I would be lying if I said that there was no pressure to be the perfect parent. When I first became a parent at the age of 19, I wanted to get everything right. I thought love meant always saying yes or buying all of the things. Again, I was young. I wanted to make sure he had designer things. I wanted to make sure that my baby looked cute, like he was, a baby doll. Not really thinking about the important things of, do I have the capacity to give him what he needs as a mom, to teach him what he needs. I knew what love was, and I knew how I wanted to love my firstborn. Um, but again, do you know what it is? Everything that you're supposed to do at the age of 19 and being a parent. I can answer that for you and tell you absolutely no, you don't. Some people are still trying to figure it out as grown adults. Okay. People who waited until their 20s and 30s to have children. And I don't think that anybody kind of masters what it is to be a parent or the perfect parent. But again, in our heads, we want to be just that perfect in every aspect of it. I remember taking him like every 3 months to get pictures. He's probably the only one of my children who has baby pictures, because when I tell you, from the time that he was born to when he turned a month old, to him turning 3 months old, to 6 months, to 9 months, to a year, it was just pictures every time you turned around. Again, like I said, young. So what I thought I was doing right, I lacked knowledge of, because of the simple fact that I was still a child myself, if we're going to be honest, a child raising a child. I do think that sometimes we think that when we say yes, um, or being available every second and never letting them down, is the right thing to do. But over time, I realized that perfection isn't just about what children need. Presence is, honesty is, and balance is. I release the need to be perfect, to be the perfect parent, and I just choose to be a present one. I worked for AT&T for 16 years. I gave them 16 years. Don't know how I made it that far, but 16 years I was dedicated to this company. No matter where they told me I needed to go, it was always this: if you want a job kind of feeling, then you need to go here to this location. You need to work these particular hours. And I remember when I left AT&T, I remember saying to myself, I have to do something different, because the first three of my children had grew up and I don't know where I was for it. I was so focused on working, or maybe even a relationship. Who knows? But remember I remember them being little and in school. And before I knew it, they were in high school and graduating. But I felt like my presence wasn't there the way that I needed my presence to be. So I knew that the next go round for the next set of my children, that I didn't want that. I wanted to be available. I wanted to be present. I didn't want them to grow up and be graduating and me thinking to myself, man, where did the time go again? But I do think in being that type of parent, like you have this guilt that kind of comes and creep in because, again, you didn't feel like you were present enough. I remember them having games and me either having to rush from work to hurry up and try to get to a track meet or a football game, or, oh, but I can only watch it for a little bit and then I got to leave so that I can go to work. It makes you feel a certain type of way because you miss out on a lot of the important things. And that guilt creeps in. So you begin to do things like say yes when you should have said no. There were times that, again, I've told you guys that I gave more than I had financially, emotionally, spiritually. I said yes when I was tired, when I was stretched thin, just to keep the peace or just to make my children happy. And even still to this day, I still do those things, even when I don't want to, but I don't want to disappoint them. I try to protect them from everything. I didn't want them to struggle, but sometimes in trying to shield them, I delayed their growth. I made their path easier, but it didn't always help them build resilience. Another mistake I made was not prioritizing myself enough. Like for a long time, I thought that self care was selfish. I poured out constantly without checking to see if I had anything left to give. But what I know is I can love my children without losing myself. But don't get me wrong, because it is very easy to lose yourself in the process of, again, trying to be that all for your children or the person that you're with or your family. You're just trying to show up for everyone else. And it took me a lot of therapy to even have an understanding, the knowledge or the will to get to the place that I'm at today. I'm not going to say it took a lot of therapy, but I've had my fair share of therapy. I am an advocate for that. I would suggest to go talk to a therapist anytime that you are going through whatever it is that you may be going through, because it does help. So, with all that therapy and things that I went through, what I've learned along the way is it's okay to apologize to your children. I've learned that setting boundaries doesn't make you a bad mom, it makes you a healthy one. I've learned that my children don't need me to be perfect, they need me to be real, to grow, to show them what grace looks like in action. And that took me a long time to understand what grace really meant. Because for a long time, I carried resentment towards my father. He was physically there, he wasn't emotionally, he wasn't present in the way that I needed him to be. Why? Because he struggled with alcohol, and that created this gap between the father I had and the father that I needed. And for a while, that made me angry because it hurt. But eventually, I realized that grace isn't about forgetting, it's about releasing what I couldn't change and choosing to parent from a place of healing and not pain. But again, childhood traumas, you carry it, even if you try to erase it, forget about it, you still have it and you make mistakes in your adult life until you actually deal with whatever's gotten you to that point. I often share that sentiment with my children because as I've grown, I've realized that I made my own mistakes too. And I wanted them to know that I see it, that I feel it, that I felt it, that I understand now what it means to parent from a place of brokenness and how hard it is to give what you never received. But I also wanted them to know that healing is possible, that we can talk about the hurt without shame, that we can grow together, even if we didn't start from a perfect place. Because, like the thing about it though, is I didn't always have that knowledge. I didn't always have that understanding. I wasn't always able to process how I process now. And I share this story kind of often. And I just had to share this story earlier today. that I remember that resentment that I had with my father, because if you've ever grown up with a parent that's had some form of addiction, for my father, it was alcohol. And I remember he would constantly ask me as a child, "You want me to stop drinking? You want me to stop drinking?" And I'm like, "Yeah." Like, because, you're a kid. So you're like, "Yeah, I want you to stop drinking." And he'll be like, "Oh, okay." And he never did. And so after years and years and years of him asking that question and him never doing it, I always felt like he chose alcohol over me. As a child, you don't think to say, why does this person indulge in alcohol? Why do they drink the way that they do? Why do, what I'm saying? Like, why do they choose this vice? Why they do what they do? You don't think about that. So again, I'm the kid, so I shouldn't have to think about it, right? But as I grow up, and it was a lot of feeling embarrassed because, if we went to a family function, like, he would drink and we would get put out, or him and my mom would argue, um, or if he came to pick me up and take me somewhere, like to the movies, he would fall asleep in the movies. And we'd like the last people leaving out the movie theater, and I'm trying to wake him up. So it was all of those things that as a child I had stored up inside of me. So the older I got, the least I wanted to be around my dad. I felt like he wasn't thinking about me. I was too busy trying to be a teenager. And then I remember, I got pregnant and he showed up to the hospital. And every time I had a kid, like, he was always there, um, to see his grandchildren. And it wasn't until the age of 30 that I said, this is who my dad is. I'm going to accept him for who he is and for where he is. There's no need of me trying to change the past, because I can't. I can't change him. I can't change his ways. I can't change any of that. And so then we begin to celebrate our birthdays together. It was a beautiful thing, right? His birthday is the day before mine, and I would go and pick him up and get us a cake and have a little cookout at the house and just take in that moment, take in that time. And it was short lived because he passed away shortly after. And still to this day, I think that's what bothers me the most, time that I let go by, the moments I didn't get to share because I was too busy being mad at the fact that I didn't have a father in my childhood. The one thing I do understand, that no matter how many times you ask your child, are they okay, um, with how they were raised? They might sugarcoat it. They might tell you, "Oh, you were a perfect mom. You didn't do anything wrong," or, but it's not necessarily always the truth, because they'll tell other people. They just won't tell it to you. And I know by far I was not the perfect parent. Again, because I was young, living life. But the older I get, like, you try to make a right to the wrongs that you may have done. Um, I wasn't no terrible parent, I'm gonna tell you that. I was just young and thinking that I needed to be in love because I love to be in love. So, um, I think that was primarily the biggest of my mistakes of believing in men. But that's a whole nother episode of, you know, me picking the same type of spirit, okay, over and over again. So I'll give you this affirmation. I give grace, not because it was given to me, but because I deserve to be free. Even in my mistakes, I am still a good mother. So this is my message to other parents. If you made mistakes, you're not alone. Don't let guilt keep you from growing. Every day is a new chance to do better, and your growth sets an example for your children. Give yourself the same grace you give them when they mess up. And to the children that's listening, those who may have resentment towards your parents, you have two choices. You can stay in the resentment or you can choose to move forward. But growth is still parenting. Healing is still parenting. Starting over is still parenting. So we're going to choose grace over guilt. And if you're listening to this and carrying guilt for whatever it is that you didn't know, couldn't give, or got wrong, just breathe, release it, learn from it, move forward, stay blessed. And that love, even imperfect, is enough. So keep loving, keep apologizing, keep trying, and keep watching. So until next time, peace and one love.